Andrea Joy, health. Andrea's got a really great story. She's completely moved to the carnivore diet. I know how you feel about that. I've certainly moved to it a while ago. I'm primarily carnivore. She had severe inflammation problems. She would go to these clinics that would cost thousands of dollars, and she was have swelling, and she was a vegan at one point, but she just found that this worked best for her. She does coach people on what she did with her transition and how it could help others. I wonder how you feel about that. She talks specifically about what meat she does eat and fats, how she cut out vegetables. We talk about just mindfulness, and just the essence of health. I say three pillars, and of course I say, nutrition, what you're eating, sleep, and of course exercise. She wants to add mindfulness, which is really important as well. But we talk about supplementation. We talk about exercise, what worked, what she went through. My story, of course, is that I was up to 340 pounds. The doctor told me to, you're going to not see your daughter when she graduates. It was my point of turning everything around. She had similar ones. She had just so much bad inflammation. She was so healthy. She was addicted to sugar. She's gone almost 7, 8 months now, I think it is, without any sugar because of this transformation. But it's a really great conversation. She's a genuinely smart person, and she's done something remarkable with herself, and she wants to show others. I think that's the trait of a remarkable person. Thanks for listening and watching. Hi, I'm Joey Pinz, and here's my 45-second introduction. After starting my business in the 90s, I started developing poor habits of eating in my diet because of working way too much. Before you know it, I found myself 340 pounds. The doctor told me if I don't lose the weight, I'm not going to see my daughter graduate. Took the next 7 months, lost 130 pounds. People think there's some secret. Ask me, how'd you lose that weight? Like there's some secret. There is no secret. How'd I lose the weight? Just one word: discipline. I've had other successes in life, and I attribute them all to discipline. Now, I'm not the king of discipline, but I believe that it can help all of us. Friends, colleagues convinced me to start a podcast. The podcast mission: how do we better ourselves and society? I talk to interesting people in health, fitness, sport, wellness, business, technology, science, art, and culture. And I eventually ask them how discipline plays a role in their life. Podcast vision: growth through learning from others. Lighting looks great. You look fantastic. Such a pleasure to talk to you, Andrea. Tell me why the carnivore diet works for you.
Yeah, it's funny. I was thinking about that and a way to explain it. Are we recording or?
Please
okay.
Go. Yes.
Okay. So the oxalates are big. So plants
What's that?
plants can't run from an animal, right? Or insects, like, are obviously rooted in the ground. So they have these things called oxalates. They're like these little, almost like sand, like little crystals. And they protect the plant from being eaten, ideally, or an animal, or bugs. Well, for us, especially, I've realized for people with autoimmune issues, those eventually build up and can cause issues.
Interesting.
So literally before I started carnivore, because I was listening a little bit to, what is it, Bay? She talked about the AIP diet and autoimmune. And I tried every diet out there. I mean, it was amazing. And I was so limited. I was basically just eating chicken, fish, and vegetables before carnivore. So I wasn't having processed food, any of that stuff. Sugar, fruit, nothing. And within 3 weeks, my cycle came back. Hormones, I mean, I could feel the hormones pumping through my body.
Wow.
It was pretty crazy. So everything, the inflammation came down. I gained weight, which for me, I did need to gain weight. I kept getting COVID over and over again in the past.
Wow.
And it was crazy. Like when I would get COVID, every autoimmune that ever existed in my body would come out to play. It was wild. Some of that stuff I don't talk about because it's so out there,
right?
That, but I'm trying to do more of this because there's a lot of people out there that I think are struggling with things like this and symptoms, and they feel very alone. And that was me.
And how did you get introduced to carnivore diet?
So I kind of heard a little bit about it. I don't remember where. I had heard a little bit from like doctors and stuff. And my chiropractor, who had chronic Lyme and has become a really good friend, said, what about carnivore? And I was like, no way. Like I used to be a vegan for years. And like the thought of having, meat and meat only seems crazy. Like vegetables are so important for us. And then I started researching it. And I realized, wow, this is pretty amazing. And I saw other people out there healing with autoimmune, and I thought, okay, I want to give it a try. And which is crazy to come from years ago being
Mm.
like that. Just I couldn't even look at meat, and then I didn't even know how to cook it. I was like, what do I do with it? Which is, but when you're that far removed from it, it's kind of hard to like really wrap your head around like, okay, how do I make this taste good? I'm used to vegetables. I mean, I
Right.
eat trays of vegetables every day
Wow.
with olive oil and avocados and smoothies. So, anyways, she mentioned it. I researched it as I do everything,
Yes.
dug deep into it, really started to understand why it would work and how it would work. And then found other people in the community to talk to me and to be mentors and to help me. And they were amazing. And like I said, within weeks, I saw improvement. And then the improvement just kept coming and kept coming. And I just felt strong. I remember going to the gym and my community gym and doing a leg exercise and thinking, I feel strong.
Yeah, that's something.
Like, yeah, like I felt strength like I dealt with chronic illness for 10 years, autoimmune,
Wow.
and I chose to do it naturally, right? Talk about having to be disciplined
Mm.
when you're choosing to heal naturally and these things that they want to give you medication for everything you're dealing with. So now I'm finally feeling the strength. I felt for the first time in my life fully like satiated. I didn't know
Hmm.
what it felt like to be satiated and to feel full and just content. And I'd had cravings for sugar. I would joke that I would sell my mom on the street corner for sugar. But that's how I felt. Like, that's honestly how I felt. Like, the cravings were so severe. I don't know if you've ever heard of candida or the listeners out there, candida,
Yeah.
but it's this overgrowth of yeast in your stomach and your body, and it craves sugar to the extreme.
Mm.
So, yeah, those went away completely for me. I did more fat than protein. So I run on fat. I'm fueled by fat, whether I'm
Amazing.
fasting or carnivore. And again, being so hesitant to this for so many years, being so disciplined of no sugar, no dairy, no
Mm,
gluten,
mm,
no this.
mm.
This was a new type of discipline that I listened to my body instead of doing what doctors said, what was in, I listened to my body and it worked.
And Andrew, you do a great job. You chronicle like 15 days in your social media and YouTube, and then 30 days and 9 days. But you found out pretty quickly which meat you wanted and which your body didn't want and did want. Talk to me about that.
Yeah, so that's a really good point. When I first started, I was eating everything.
Right.
I remember I was on a trip with a friend and it was like bacon and turkey and chicken. And like, I just went nuts because I was starving, honestly, in the beginning.
Mm.
And I think I was lacking so many nutrients for so many years that my body was like, okay, we're not like starving anymore. We have this. But then after like a month or two, I started to notice some issues come up. Just histamine was one issue where I was like sneezing after I was eating or congested in my sinuses or a
Hmm.
headache.
Hmm.
And I thought, okay, what's wrong? And then I realized, okay, lion diet might be better, which is just red meat. I might want to try that because the eggs typically give an autoimmune reaction. The chicken isn't very nutrient dense. Like it was really important for me to eat meat that was packed with nutrients. So so I tried the lion diet and did honestly lamb only. Beef doesn't always agree with everybody. There's actually a good amount of people out there that have issues with beef and don't know it. So I just stuck to lamb and fat and kind of went from there. And then I brought back in wild salmon and then bison. Um, but there was no forcing of anything. It was just listening to my body.
Mm.
Butter I couldn't do, so I was beef tallow, a lot of beef tallow. I mean, jars of it. I'll go out with people, or people will see me eating. They're like, "What's that?" I'm like, "Fat." And they're like, "Just fat." I'm like, "Straight fat." And it sounds
Wonderful.
crazy. And I would, if I didn't, have gone through this myself, I would think, "Wow, that's pretty wild." And I've done it with a doctor as well, getting the blood work done, checking my cholesterol, all of it. And it was pretty cool. One of my doctors said to me, like, I've never seen anybody turn their hormones around without medication like you have,
Mm.
which is food this quick. So
Food is medicine, Andrea.
it is
And
for me. Yep, it
yeah,
definitely is.
I've never heard the term lion diet, but that makes real sense. And I like the way that you kind of tested those meats. All too often, we just kind of eat, and then if we don't feel good, we think it's related to something else. But it's really You got to identify it. And another issue is I feel is that something that I've been used to for a long time all of a sudden isn't. You get older and whatever may happen, you just really got to listen to your body.
Absolutely. And it's also, I think we're taught like, well, this must be healthy. Fruit has
Mm,
to be healthy. I mean, I remember eating blueberries and my gums swelling.
wow.
So it was a mast cell reaction. It was like the list of like food allergies was crazy. I was exposed to mold toxicity, Lyme, had leaky gut. I mean, just so many things.
Huh.
And I've said this before, it didn't surprise me because when the immune system takes such a hit, I was a business owner. I owned an insurance company for almost 15 years.
Wow.
And not everybody likes insurance agents. It was a stressful job
Oh,
at
stress.
times. So yeah, there was everything on top of everything. And it didn't surprise me, looking back that all that kind of came out to play. So I could have definitely done medication for a lot of it and pain medication and steroids and all of it, but I chose not to. I chose the harder route. And
Much
again,
better.
like you said, listening to my body of like
Yeah.
what it needed and not just because I was told that or I read something.
Yeah, I mentioned before we got on that I moved to the new area here in Florida, and I got a new health practitioner, and I was very happy to hear when he asked, "What do I eat?" Because you just don't hear that often, and that's essential. What are you putting in your body? Almost all my life, I just never heard it from my doctor. Terrible.
Absolutely. I know I've stuck with more functional holistic doctors because
Yeah.
of that. That's a huge part of what they do. And now it's a huge part of what I do as a health and mindset coach. But I do think it's pretty amazing to see that, general practitioners and more traditional are now
Mm,
asking those questions. Uh, it's important because I don't think people ever did. And I think it's just was an easy fix of like, eat what you want, but you can take a pill for it to make it
right.
better.
Yeah, the thing is they're doctors of medicine. We can't kind of
Hmm.
forget that, and so they
Right.
want to prescribe that's what they've been taught. So it's a very different system. I remember hearing that you went from chicken to duck eggs.
Oh,
Eggs,
chicken eggs and duck eggs. Yeah.
yeah, eggs get a bad rap. I know as a kid we were always told cholesterol, cholesterol, but I eat a lot of eggs, Andrea.
Yeah. I used to too. The only thing I see that I've experienced with eggs is the autoimmune stuff. Other than
Mm,
that, eggs are great. Like the
yes,
cholesterol, that has been debunked.
it
That's
sure
old,
has.
like that's just old school, honestly. It's again listening to your body, but that's the link to that and cholesterol is kind of silly. So I see nothing wrong with eggs unless you're reacting to it. And again, if you're reacting to it, it's usually because there's some type of autoimmune or some type of gut
Mm.
issue that needs to be healed so you can enjoy them.
So you have no more vegetables.
No, it'll be 8 months next week.
Wow.
No vegetables. The best is no sugar, no flour. I mean, no dairy. I didn't even do dairy because dairy can cause a little bit of, autoimmune kind of flare up. But some people do dairy. Like everyone's different on the carnivore,
Of
right? They
course.
listen to their body. But the sugar has been the coolest part. It has been really amazing too, because before it was like, well, I'll have like a vegan cookie later. I'll have like something sweetened with honey, tomorrow. Like I was always thinking about it.
Mm,
And alcohol was never my thing, but it was sugar. It was like, I'll
mm.
go to a bar, just give me a sundae. Like, let
Mm.
me eat a banana split. So that's been really cool. It's like I've cut all that out. And most days just eat lamb and salt
It's amazing.
and
It's
fat. And
absolutely
I
amazing.
feel totally like there's no like desire of like, oh, I can't wait to eat something else. I really don't.
It's amazing. I mean, I'm primarily carnivore, and it's amazing to me just how satisfying it is. I eat just twice a day. Now, sure, there's times where I go out and I deviate, socially, but primarily it's a lot of beef and a lot of eggs and a lot of, but you're full afterwards. You don't want anything sweet, and you know, uh, the American diet is just so poor. We're seeing this new administration come in. They're making a lot of promises. Hopefully, it'll come true. But with the corn syrup and with these
Uh,
substitutes and things like that. And I remember hearing you also. You went to the tallow, but just eliminating seed oils is
oh my
so important
gosh.
for. I mean, those it's just petroleum, right? It's just olive oil, avocado, and occasionally coconut, right? That's generally the rule
Yeah,
of
and
thumb?
honestly, butter. Like I was like
Butter,
anti, but even butter and the beef tallow, like there's nothing, or ghee. Ghee is
right,
good for
ghee.
people that are lactose intolerant.
Yeah.
So there's plenty of options, like to not be afraid of fat. That way
I
of
know.
thinking of fat
I
makes you
know.
fat is not
Right.
true. I mean, that's all I've been eating for 8 months. So
Yeah, we were taught. I maybe I'm a little bit older than you, but yeah, the whole move not to remove fat from our diet, and we start to learn now that they were paid not to say sugar, and they made
yeah.
fat the villain, and But I mean, I just had a steak the other night. Went out to a very nice restaurant, and there was a nice big piece of fat on the end there, Andrea, and I ate it. And I loved. It's just it's wonderful. So tell me about the mammogram journey. It was a little
Oh yeah,
scary, and yeah, tell me
yeah.
start from the beginning, please.
So I talked about this a little bit. This was something that was like on my heart for a while to talk about. It's one of those things that I was doing a usual annual mammogram, and I do an ultrasound. Um, and they found, a little lump or a little spot that they questioned. And my first thought was, wow, I've never really, I had one friend that I'd had this conversation with, but I know there's other women out there dealing with this. So it was just a very empowering moment of them saying, we want to do a biopsy, even though it was small, nothing to be too concerned. We want to do a biopsy just to make sure. And my first thought was, no, no, thank you. In a very like polite way. Like I am not giving my body the environment for things to grow. I know what I'm doing. I believe in what I'm doing. Listen to my body. I've learned so much over the last 10 years. I didn't want to be irresponsible, so I followed up and did ultrasounds every 4 months or so. I wasn't going to ignore it, but I also felt I had the right to speak up to my doctor and say, I don't want to do that. I'd rather do this. Because that is invasive. And I just don't, I feel like I've been through enough and that's not something I want to do unless it was like super aggressive and it was alarming. But even that, I really do believe in my body, that its ability to heal. So I followed up with it. I stayed on the carnivore diet, and it was probably about almost a year later. Um, I said, all right, I'll do another ultrasound. If you think it's really risky, I'll consider the biopsy. And they did it and they said, we can see through it. It's nothing to worry
Wow.
about. And I just thought, wow, like, how many women go through that where they just listen? And it works both ways, right? There are
Hmm.
times where I've told a doctor there's a problem and they're like, you're fine. So if you're getting, that a mammogram done, you feel something is off and they're saying no, it's also a good time to speak up and say, no, I disagree. I feel
Hmm.
like something is wrong.
Hmm.
So it's really about just speaking up and not being afraid to say, like, that doesn't feel right. I don't want to do that, or I do want to do that, or can we compromise? And it's not going against the doctor, it's working as a team.
Hmm.
And knowing that you have a voice too. It's your body. And that's an invasive procedure. Even though they make it seem so simple, not a big deal, it's a big deal to me. So I was very fortunate that it did work out, but I will continue doing it that way where I do it a safer route and I give my body the chance to do what it needs to do.
Can you express no pun intended, the joy in kind of harmonizing and understanding your yourself and your body as you grow together? I mean, it almost seems like at certain points in younger in life we're working against it. We don't understand it, and then to kind of learn to listen to it. I mean, can you explain what that harmony is like?
Absolutely. I used to call it whispers,
Huh.
where I would have whispers of what my body needed. But as a business owner, I ignored the whispers.
Mm.
So I wasn't really in tune and listening to what my body needed. And I think that can be very common for a lot of us. Even when we're thirsty or hungry, it's like, oh, later, or I'll get sleep another day. It's that whole work hard, play hard that drives me crazy
Mm.
because when we listen to our body, we get more done. And for me, it was mindfulness and meditation shifted everything for me. When I became still and quiet within, I just became more in tune. I became more aware of my thoughts and how my thoughts affected my body and then the actions that came out of it. And I've told the story before where I remember taking like 40 supplements a day and like shaking, taking them because I was rushing and just thinking like there's no way that I'm going to be able to digest these properly and they're going to work because I'm in such fight or flight.
Hmm.
So it was really tapping into, okay, what's happening right now? And I felt like most of my life was like rushing from one thing to the next. So how can you really hear what your body needs if you're always in fight or flight and you're
Yeah.
rushing from quote tiger or bear? You know what I mean? So yeah, it took time, but as I did, I became so in tune that I heard every whisper,
Mm.
and I can't ignore it now. If my body needs something, I'll do it. I know to be in bed by 10.
Hmm.
Like, I know how I feel if I don't. My body tells me. So those things are really, really important that we tend to overlook, and we just tend to push through and say, I'll be all right. I can do it, tomorrow or later, or I know I need to drink water, but I don't, and I refuse to do that to myself ever again. I honor myself too much.
Hmm. Yeah, I'm glad you mentioned sleep too. So easy to do and so often overlooked.
Yeah, absolutely. It's our body, I think of like puts on like little construction hats and
Hmm.
does construction at night, and we heal and adjust our hormones and puts memories away and sorts through things. And I just think that's really beautiful. So getting to bed, especially by 10 o'clock, is important for your body to go through all the cycles it needs to, and to heal and to store. We can actually have memories stored incorrectly if we don't get proper sleep. So
Hmm.
it's pretty wild. And it's that simple thing that we can do. And it doesn't have to be done overnight. It's that discipline of, I normally go to bed at 11. I'm going to try 10:45 tonight. And then in a few weeks, I'll try 10:30 and then
Hmm.
10:15. It's just sticking to it, knowing that you deserve that and it'll improve your life.
Is the carnivore diet for everyone?
I think the carnivore diet is for everyone to try and
Mm.
see. I think of it as a tool. And I feel like a lot of people would do well with it. Some people for 90 days, some people on it for 10, 15 years, some people for a year. It's different for everybody, which is the beautiful thing about it. It's listening to your body again. But I do think most people could benefit from it, even short term, and even to try. Like, why not try a few days of eliminating the dairy or the gluten or the sugar or processed foods and just try it? I will say I've seen a lot of people stop because things do come up, and you don't always see that in the carnivore world of
Mm.
issues of the histamine reactions, or your stomach's upset, or you feel dehydrated or something. So there is a lot of ins and outs, which I have thankfully learned a lot of them. So that's why people tend to try it and then get nervous and say, my doctor says meat's bad or red meat's bad, and um, but I think with more information out there, that people can try it. And like you said, like you went for the fat first, like it's a slow ease into it to really trust your body to tell you what it needs.
So talk about Andrew, let's talk about listening to your body. What should somebody do? So they're, let's say they're going to try a few things, they're going to eat a couple things and then how does one listen to their body?
I think my first thought is always meditation, about getting quiet
Mm.
with yourself and having moments each day where you're at peace and still, because then you're more aware and in tune with your body. So that's the first step. And then I think of mindful eating, of like taking a few breaths before you eat, looking at what's on your plate, being
Mm.
out of fight or flight, right? So because I think sometimes we can react to food just because we're in stress mode. We're eating in the car, we're eating at our desk. So giving yourself the chance to really be calm, taking a few deep breaths, looking at your plate, being grateful for it, and then chewing it and really enjoying it. So
Mm.
that's a big awareness. So I think there's a lot of steps there that you can really just become in tune with yourself to say, okay, is this a reaction? What's happening? Do I feel inflamed? People keep journals and will mark down how something made them feel. It's hard sometimes to pinpoint it, but I feel like with practice, and that's what it took for me, practice, right? I didn't just start out carnivore going, oh, I know I'll end up at lion and I know this is going to happen to me. I just kept trying and I didn't give up. And I kept learning and exploring podcasts like yourself and everyone out there doing these things, where I kept learning from others. And then I finally get into a good rhythm. And I'm sure it'll keep changing, but I'll keep educating myself, listening to my body, doing mindful eating, and just kind of, feeling my way through it as best as I can. And if I mess up and I react to something, that's okay. I
Hmm.
just keep trying. And then, find my balance there with it, without not going to the extreme of pushing myself, but with still kind of taking a little bit of chance and stepping out of my comfort zone.
Yeah, you've got an excellent, continuing that thought of listening to yourself. You've got a great post where you say the 7 surprising benefits of talking to yourself.
I do it a lot.
Clarifies your thoughts, boosts problem solving, enhance focus and memory, improves emotional regulation, increase self-compassion, strengthens motivation, helps you stay present. We were always well, I was as a kid, why are you talking to yourself? That's strange. But it's also listening.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's funny, I thought of that because I have been working a lot lately, and I'm self-employed as a coach. So I thought, I talk to myself a lot. And I've been talking to my dog a lot lately. Is this healthy for me? So I started researching it. I was just like, I want to understand myself better. Is this good for me? And I started researching. I was like, this is amazing for me. I
Mm,
feel so much better.
mm,
I'm not crazy. Like, this is so good for me to talk through things, talk something out. Even when we first started this conversation, I said, I'm nervous.
yeah,
Like, to me, that's beneficial to get that out. It feels
right.
good. So, yeah, I mean, I feel like a lot of people do it, and it's something that I'll do out loud or to myself, but I don't see anything wrong with that. I think it's really, especially if it's, more positive, right? There's that positive or negative self talk. And I feel like we spend, unfortunately, a lot of our days, if we're not aware of those thoughts, a lot of negative of that self
Mm,
criticism.
mm, mm.
So I use it to kind of talk through things and talk myself up and really instill that I'm strong and I'm powerful. And, it felt kind of cheesy and silly in the beginning, but I've just started to develop a better relationship with myself.
Yeah, it's very, very important. And you mentioned before, it's like sometimes, we're working so much, and the next thing you know, this time we're starving, so we go shove something in our mouth, and I talked about just taking small bites and enjoying it. My father's Italian, so that we sit down, and we have long meal, and we talk, and we argue, and we commiserate, but it's all over food. But we're just taking our time. Um, it's just all around just very, very important. Um, Getting back to the carnivore diet, uh, there's recent news, and there's a big movement towards this, and we see it. But there are those who still would say, that well, how could you possibly recommend this? The meat is bad. It's bad for the environment. It's bad for you. All these kinds of oppositions that vegans and others may have. And your answer to that is,
One, that's okay. That
yeah.
used to be me. It's okay to think that's not right, that's wrong. People say that to me all the time. I was
Mm,
there once when I was a vegan. If somebody would have said carnivore, I would have been like, that sounds horrible for many
mm,
different reasons. But so I would say for people like that to educate themselves and just be open. That's
mm,
all. Being open to not judging it and being curious about it. I think curiosity is such a beautiful thing. So when you're curious about it, you can be open minded, learn about it, and it plants a seed, right? I tell a lot of people about it. I get a lot of judgment, but that's okay. But I plant seeds of people of like, I've tried everything and I haven't gotten better. A
mm.
wonder. And that's it. I'm a resource for them. If they have questions, there's so many resources out there.
There are.
But I think that openness and curiosity is really helpful. And if they're not even there yet, that's okay too. Just hopefully in time, hearing things like this at least plants a seed for them to know that it's an option for them if they want it.
Yeah, open-mindedness. All too often we see, in the society how things can be so polarizing, they're on one side or the other, and people kind of dig in. But just have an open mind to it. Try it. If it doesn't work for you, simply move on. There's no question with that. You've got another great post where you say, 5 tools that help me on my healing journey, because we went through this long kind of healing, and I don't know if it ever stops, by the way, the healing journey. But yeah, mindset, nutrition and gut health, lifestyle habits, supplementation, and clean living.
Yeah, that's the basis of what I teach everybody I work with right there.
Hmm.
Um, Clean living is one of my favorites because I think that's so rarely heard or talked about. Diet and supplements and mindset is more like buzzwords, I feel like, and a little more
Mm.
popular and cool kids on the block. Um, but the clean living is something that, again, being so sick, I was sensitive to like every chemical. It was insane. Like I had to switch anything I cleaned with. I switched my mattress. I
Wow.
mean, personal care products from lotion to hair products because our skin's our largest organ. So I was taking in all these heavy metals and chemicals that I didn't know about, and I no longer had the option to do that because I was so reactive to it. So that part's a big thing for me because I think people are so unaware of it and are using bleach every day. They're using their hairspray, their lipstick, which they're eating, and it's on their skin. And I get it. Like I I only do my hair once a year where I get highlights, and it's at an organic salon.
Hmm.
Even breathing that in isn't. So I know some people, I've had clients that say, I'm not giving up dyeing my hair. I refuse to. Like I just won't. So, it's a process with that. People slowly learning, okay, these things could make me really sick. They're endocrine disruptors. They will disrupt your hormone, and people lead with having hypothyroidism, having thyroid issues, or having trouble getting pregnant because of these chemicals we are exposed to constantly in our foods, in our environment, in our clothing, in our mattress, in our sheets, in our couch, everything.
Talk to me about supplementation. You kind of alluded to it at one point where you were taking a lot. How important is it to you?
So again, I think supplementation for me, my journey was really understanding, okay, more than like 10 or 12 supplements a day is probably a burden on the body, right? A little too
Mm.
much. And then understanding which ones I really needed. For me, digestive enzymes were a big thing to digest
Hmm.
my food because I had so much gut issues. And usually after the age of 35, we do have some gut issues and digestion problems because mostly pharmaceuticals, medication we've taken, Advil, stress alone. So digestion can be hard. So digestive enzymes, which was important, especially for me in the carnivore, finding things to help me digest fat because just last year they wanted to remove my gallbladder because I had trouble with fat, and now I eat
Wow.
fat like primarily. So I had to really work through that and start to take the right supplementation like lipase or ox bile and digestive enzymes to help break down what I was eating. It was a big shift of so many vegetables and then so much meat. I like magnesium because we burn through magnesium. Even if we're taking magnesium or we're getting maybe a little bit of it in our food, we burn through so much because of stress. A probiotic is usually good. I'm a big fan of vitamin D as well, even though I live in Florida. So there's a few there that I think are really, really important. And everyone's got to find what works for them. Some
Mm.
people, their doctor will recommend one and they'll stay it their whole lives because their doctor told them to.
Mm.
But they're all not created equally as well. So some supplements have things in there like seed oils, as you mentioned.
Right. Right.
So here you are taking a supplement and it's actually causing inflammation because of
Uh,
the seed oil in it, which
uh,
is horrible and so
uh,
unfair. So really being mindful too of the kind of supplement you're having and doing your research on it and look at the ingredients. I don't care what the front of any box, pill box, like supplement, bag, any of it says. I always turn it around, look at what's inside of it.
My goodness, recently, we have a cold spell here, and one
Mm-hmm.
of my daughters was ill. So, they wanted to get some of a particular brand has like these gummies that are with vitamin C. And so I got them. Their fructose syrup is
Mm-hmm.
sugar. But it's candy.
Yeah.
It's just candy. How about quercetin?
I haven't used that much, to be honest with you.
Hmm.
It's one that I haven't really explored with, but I've heard some good things.
And the mushrooms, like lion's mane, the turkey, these
Same
kind
thing.
of.
I tried those back in the day of like doing a lot of those, and I just didn't. I really prefer sticking with the more like traditional stuff of the magnesium and keep it really simple. Again, I encourage you to be open minded. Do
Yes.
your research, see if it works for some people. They might be like, "Well, I really feel a difference," but I really stick with when I'm working with people towards the probiotics, the magnesium, the vitamin D, the digestive enzymes, and not overloading them with too much. I just not a big. I just for your body to really take in that many supplements a day and digest it and do good with it is hard. So
Interesting.
we don't want to put added stress on the body.
Hmm. Hmm. And I always said I know how you agree with this, but it's kind of the three pillars to health are what you eat, nutrition, sleep, and then exercise. We really haven't talked about exercise at all.
Yeah, I mean, I hear you on that, but I do think mindset's a big part of it because for me, if I
Mm,
didn't include mindset, I wouldn't have gotten better. There's just no way
interesting.
around it. I had
Shift
depression,
the way you
yeah,
think.
anxiety. Granted, exercise helps a lot. And for me, this was really interesting, at least for me, it felt interesting, is I was the type A, which a lot of women I've come across that have autoimmune or that type A that go, 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 accomplish, do. Um, and I realized, okay, working out and lifting weights and doing exercises like that kind of fed into that rush, rush, rush for me.
Mm,
I had to kind of step back and say, okay, I need a balance because when the body becomes imbalanced, that's when we get sick in any area. So for me, that fed into the rushing. It felt good because I was moving quickly or pushing myself. When I started doing yoga
hmm,
or just stretching and being more mindful and slowing down, still, building muscle in different ways, even like rock climbing or things like that, or just stretching at home or doing smaller movements, I realized, oh, this feels like more of a balance. This is important because it's a mind body connection. I'm still, I mean, yoga was a big shift for me. I was even doing aerial yoga at one point, which was really fun.
Wow.
But so it's really being mindful too of like, okay, maybe something different might be more beneficial. So I can be mindful and be, doing some movements to build strength. And again, yoga is great for balance. So I go back and forth. I do strength training, I do yoga. I used to stick with just strength training because I loved it so much. And I learned to really enjoy yoga and lean into that more. So
10 nutrient-rich foods for your brain. Some of your more social media posts: blueberries, wild salmon, walnuts, avocados, spinach, dark chocolate, turmeric, eggs, matcha tea, and pumpkin seeds. Do you participate in these often?
I don't because I do more carnivore, but I think I do the salmon. And I think of like when you're saying that, it's like the fats in those, right? Because
The
our brain is
avocado.
made up of so much fat. So it's
Yeah.
feeding that fat and protein to our bodies that are just packed with nutrients. And it's that, again, that gut and brain connection. There's like a little highway that goes back and forth between our gut and our brain, and they're always communicating. So if we're eating those rich foods that are good like that and those fats, it then sends a signal to the brain, and the brain loves the fats.
Mm. Yeah, and turmeric is an interesting one because I read, and correct me if I'm wrong, is that even if you start eating like Indian foods, got a lot of turmeric, but it's still not enough to make a difference. So you should really look at that as a supplement.
You can. I did try as a supplement. For me, it didn't make much of a difference for inflammation. I did
Mm.
cook with it a lot because I'd been to an Ayurvedic retreat and learned about the Indian culture. So really
Mm.
got into turmeric and using it in my eggs and everything, honestly. I
Mm.
ended up loving the flavor. But it's one of those things to try. For some people, it is a shift. I think getting like a turmeric, the little root itself at the grocery store and putting that in maybe a smoothie. I used to do actually shots of them,
Wow.
so you could put it in a smoothie. You could cook with it, but it's more of the natural and raw form if you can.
Mm.
But I do think turmeric can be very, very powerful for people.
I've always, I have vegan friends, and uh, to me, it seems that the Indian food does vegan the best. It's just because I see a lot of this vegan cookies and things like that that just are very unhealthy. But if what I hear from my friends that are vegans, you got to do the Indian diet.
Yeah, and
Thoughts?
I do think there's like anything, there's a healthy version of vegan and a non-healthy version. Like,
Mm,
you can get Oreos that say they're vegan.
that's right.
So it's like
Chocolate chip cookies. Yeah. Yeah.
right. And vegetarians, I've seen it where all they eat is pasta.
Right.
That flour turns immediately into
It
sugar.
sure does.
So,
Yeah.
in carnivore, I feel like it can be the same way. And I start out with bacon in the beginning and realizing, okay, bacon's not the best option,
Mm,
even the bacon without sugar. So I can get cleaner meat that's more nutrient dense. So with each one, I think, and I was like hardcore vegan. I went to the vegan festivals, had the vegan shirts, like I was
wow.
all about it. Mainly for animals, I really wanted. I
Sure.
watched a lot of documentaries and did a lot of crying watching that, and then just felt like, okay, this is something good for me to try. Unfortunately, I think staying on that long wasn't best for me. But with any of it, it's really educating yourselves to know that
Mm.
you're doing it in a way where you're still getting the right nutrients and you're not starving your body.
Andrea, has there been anything in the recent weeks that you changed your mind on?
That's a good question. Um, I don't really know if there's anything lately that I've changed my mind. I would say there's probably things. I mean, honestly, what we talked about with the self-talk, like I kind
Mm,
of felt a little self-conscious about like, is this normal to be talking to myself so much and working through things? And then when I did the research on it, I was like, I just had compassion for myself. Like, this is totally okay to do. It's healthy
mm,
for me, and
mm,
it's good for me. So, yeah, I think that was a change, a shift there because I've seen people that are super self-conscious of it and kind of will tease themselves about it and stuff. And I was like, no, this is totally fine. And now I've done the research, so I'm good.
I had an aunt who used to say, "You could talk to yourself as long as you don't answer."
Yeah.
It's a little tongue in the cheek, of course, but
Oh yeah, I know. And
yeah,
I do answer.
it's
I had a
funny.
client.
So it's interesting when I asked the question about changing your mind. I just think it just helps to know that we stay open-minded. I mean,
Yeah,
I reserve the right to change my mind on any given topic, given new evidence. I mean,
absolutely.
I don't know. I the older I get, the more questions I have, Andrea. So
Mhm.
it's fun when I ask that question. I've gotten answers like, I went from uh, you know, uh, full cooked hamburgers to medium rare hamburgers,
Oh
and
yeah.
then I've also got ones like, well, I question the existence of God, and so it's fascinating to me where that question kind of leads. And like many questions, there's no real wrong answer. So when I started I'm in the tech industry back in the 90s. I was working way too hard, Andrea. I was not paying attention to
Hmm.
myself, inflammation, all these things. I was in my 20s. I was invincible. I'm not going to die. I can handle anything. And then I'm at the doctor and I'm 340 pounds. And she says to me, if you don't lose this weight, you're not going to see your daughter graduate. My oldest was just born. So scared me. I'm driving home, punching the steering. What have I done to me? This is my pie hole. Nobody to blame. I'm going to make significant changes. I'm going to listen to my
Hmm.
body. And oftentimes when we see people lose weight, they look at it as a finishing line. You alluded to it before, like, okay, now that I lost it, now I can go back to the way I was. Can I have some sweets tomorrow? Can I? You have to make permanent changes. So I lost about 130 pounds, kept it off. People ask me how, like there's some secret. And I always say discipline. You mentioned it before. Uh, Motivation, routine, etc. I wonder how discipline plays a role in your life, Andrea Joy.
Well, first of all, congratulations.
Yeah.
Because it's one thing to choose to lose weight, it's another to be told you have to. It's a
Mm,
big difference. And that was the case I went through where it was like, okay, I'm in so much pain, like I have to make these changes. It wasn't a
mm,
choice. And that's really big. So when you're told, like in my case, I realized I'm not going to take medication. I have to. So discipline was everything,
mm,
to put myself first and say, okay, these little things. And that's where I think people get confused. I feel like they have to go from here, like from here to here. And you
mm,
don't. It's those small changes every day, being disciplined to say, these are the things I need to do every day, whether it takes 5 minutes or 30 minutes or an hour.
mm,
Every day I'm going to stay consistent. That's the key. Discipline and consistency. And every day I'm going to stay consistent
mm,
and I'm going to get somewhere. And if I stumble and don't do well that day, I'm going to go right back to doing it again the next day. So I think sometimes we set these really big goals and we feel like we have to be disciplined and do all this stuff. It's a new year. And then we end up realizing this is exhausting because change takes energy and it drains us, right? We're creating new pathways in the brain when we're doing different things and it's new. And that takes a lot out of us. So discipline is great if it's small changes every day and being disciplined to do it. Where if you can't get to the gym for your usual hour, 30 minutes, just working out for 10 minutes.
mm,
If you're not drinking enough water that day, that's okay. The next day, do it. But being disciplined to do it and setting your sights on it. And maybe it's a notepad or something that you look at every day to know these are the things I know I needed to do. And I have an end goal of what I want to feel accomplished. And then you just keep going, keep setting different goals and kind of exploring. And like you said before, not being afraid to shift that and change
mm.
it if it's not working, because I think that's where we get stuck too. It's just like, well, I'm so disciplined, but this doesn't get me where I want to go.
Right.
So be open and curious, shift it a little bit, so it can discipline changed my life because I made it a point to
Hmm,
change my food and stick with it, to get to bed at a certain time, to drink so much water. That's a big thing with carnivore. If you're not drinking enough electrolytes, it can be very painful.
mm,
So I made that choice to be disciplined every day. And I think too, sometimes, at least with my clients, I don't want them to feel restricted, like they're stuck and they can't do this and they can't do that and they have to do this. Like finding what's fun for you, where it's discipline, but it's things that truly light you up inside. Not all of it has to be just doing the thing.
yeah, iterate and repeat. What works today may not work forever, and be able to make changes.
Yeah.
You're in the insurance business, you're a business owner. Was discipline always kind of in your life? Did you get better at it? Was it a mainstay? Was it taught in the household?
Yeah, I would say the discipline of working hard was always there
Mm,
by both my parents. They were both extremely hard workers. Um, And for me, being more of that like push and over to exceed and just constantly, I was always a goal setter for sure. It was the first of the year I would set categories of like spiritual and career and money and like always setting goals. That's always been a part of me for sure. But I think that's also from growing up and not having much, and then knowing like I'm going to go out there and devour the world. Like I'm going to accomplish, I'm going to invest in real estate, I'm going to own businesses, I'm going to learn and do it all, which is great. But that also led to burnout. So I didn't have that balance and that discipline in a way of like, hey, listen to your body when it gets to be too much, rest. So I do feel like I was fortunate where it was a part of me probably just from having not
Hmm.
having much growing up and having to go to college and work my way through college to pay for it. And I was just so appreciative of everything I had.
What kind of person will you not work with?
I've experienced this. And I would say somebody that's not ready to change. I talk to
Mm,
people that are like, I want to lose weight. I want to lower inflammation. I want to have more stillness and peace and not feel so stressed. And if they want to do the work, but they're not willing to make changes,
mm.
I can't help them. They're just not ready yet, right? So somebody has to be open and ready to at least make small changes. If they're not, they just want to sign up for a program, but not actually do any of the work. It's very difficult to work with someone like that.
Yeah, I hear this often, Andrea, where, I'm playing with tennis with somebody and they're like, I just don't get it. I exercise, I play tennis 2 or 3 times a week, but I just don't lose weight. And I said, well, you're exercising, which is wonderful, but you have to get healthy before you can lose weight. And it's, if you want to lose weight, it's just what you're eating. It's what your diet is. So many of us, I see this in the gym. You can't outwork a bad diet.
I've
Why am
heard
I? What, I run 5 miles. How come I'm not losing weight as they're eating potato chips or something? Yeah, and the willingness not to change. I want to lose weight, but I still need to do these kinds of things. It's even the best coach can't make those kind of changes.
right? People have to be willing to change. And I see that a lot with the working out, which again, working out is great, but your arteries get clogged from the things that you're eating. You can't
Right.
undo that with, diet. And they say it's about, 80% what we eat and 20% exercise.
Interesting.
And I think there's so
Okay.
much to learn on that. Like even when it comes to like our immune system, so much percentages in our gut, there's so much we're still learning. Mindset's a big part of it. Like if we are, playing tennis every night, and we're stressed out all day and we feel better playing tennis, but we go back to the same day of having the same thoughts, right? They say there's 60 to 70,000 thoughts a day on average we have, and about
Wow.
90% of the same as the day before.
Hmm.
So how are we going to get much change if we're thinking the same
Wow.
things, which will lead to the same emotions and the same actions? So mindset is really, really important for people. And I think that's the part we miss sometimes. And then of course the food that you really can't like outdo it. Like if you're getting constant glucose spikes from, the flour and the chips and the cookies and the cakes and all that, you can't repair that with working out. It helps, of course, but that does a lot of damage. Those type of foods, the seed oils, the inflammation it causes over and over again, and people get swelling of their hands and joints. So yeah, the combination of all of it, the mindset, the nutrition, our gut health, the exercise, the movement, supplementation, and that clean living, we forget too. Like it can be
Mm.
hard to lose weight just because you're being exposed to so many toxins. We have this toxicity bucket that only can go so far and then it gets full. And some people struggle to lose weight just from that alone.
Mm. Yeah, when you mentioned the seed oils, my goodness, you can get so healthy just avoiding those. But it's in everything. I'm an ingredients reader. I know I get looks in the stores, but I read ingredients. I want to know what's in this darn thing. I'm not. I remember one person. They were in the aisle and they were they were a vendor, like they were selling whatever they were selling. Where you can get tastes, and and I just went down the aisle and I must have looked at 4 or 5 and I just kind of saw her looking at the corner. She goes, "What are you looking for?" She says to me. And I said, "Well, let's start with no seed oils. Let's
Mm-hmm.
just start there because everything I just saw has has seed oils in it. Everything I just saw. You can have a little sugar, you can have, a little bit, just if we could just avoid those, and they're inexpensive,
Mm-hmm.
and they're just used in canola and grapeseed. And oh my goodness, these are just, if you even saw how they were made, they have to have additives to make them not smell and
Yes.
to bleach them and what
Yep.
they look like. And they were only used on animals when it developed, I want to say in the 40s. And then they said, well, let's just keep on using it, for it's just that alone. And this new administration's come in, they say they're going to heavy tax it. And I would love to see it, because every once in a while I want a potato chip, but there's maybe two out of the hundreds that I'll eat, that just have, I'm going on a rant here, Andrea, but
No, I get it. I'm in the grocery store looking at the same thing, and I usually
yeah,
people approach me and say, "Can you help me?" I'm
right.
like, "Sure," because I know so many of the ones that are safe. But even that, they change, right? If a
They
new
do.
company gets sold, or they change things, they
Ah,
want to make more money. They'll change
yes.
the ingredients. So you can't always just assume it's the same as it was the week before or the month before.
Yes.
But ideally, staying like I go into the grocery store now, I'm like, oh, that's right. Like people shop at all those like other aisles. Like
Mhm.
I forget because it's their processed foods. And again, people are doing their best, right? They walk in a grocery store and they're doing their best with what they know. So
Mm,
if this stuff isn't removed out of there or they're not educated on it, they don't know. They're doing their best to feed themselves and
right.
feed their families. They're busy. They have busy lives. So yeah, we definitely can do better there and just educating people, even if the changes aren't made that we want made. And just so people have a choice of what they're having.
Yeah, and red flags is when there's 50, 60 ingredients. I mean,
Yeah.
you
You can't pronounce them.
can't pronounce it, a lot of zines and yeah, and just the problem is, of course, is that these fatty, salty, bad foods are so inexpensive and they're everywhere and there's bright signs around them and they're so kind of attractive, but it just
And addictive. They
and
make
it
them so
they
that you're addicted
oh
to it, which is again not fair because people don't realize that. And I was one of them with the sugar. I was just so addicted to it. And almost
mm,
kind of proud of it that I wouldn't quit it or give it up when I was in my 20s. Like I was
mm,
proud, like not realizing because in my mind it was like smoking and drinking, things like that were bad for you.
right.
But sugar, how bad can it
Come
really
on.
be? I
Yeah.
mean, come on. It's at the I can go in and buy it. I don't have to show my ID. It's like I can eat as much as I want if I want to. My doctor never mentions it. I'll just eat a whole bunch of cookies. Who cares? And then learning that. And my mom was diagnosed with stage 4 cancer when I was around 26,
Mm,
25. It was about a year after I started my insurance business. And that was my first introduction. And oh, you shouldn't use the microwave. Oh, it is important what you eat. I shouldn't just eat whatever I want. So that really, luckily, she survived. We both learned a lot through that, and that was that was my first shift of like, I got to take this seriously.
even I'll call them out. So Coca-Cola in Mexico uses cane sugar.
Mm-hmm.
In the United Kingdom uses sugar. In the US uses high fructose corn syrup. High fructose corn syrup is sweeter,
Yeah,
less expensive, and more addictive.
yeah,
Countries that border us don't use it. But here in the US, it's amazing to me how bad the system is here. And
it
we have
is
to get educated. We have to, as the consumer, control the market and not the market control us. We have to stop buying these products so they'll change it.
right.
And that's, we have power. And it's shown that way. There's an app too that I use. I forget what it's called, where you can actually scan in the barcode and it'll kind of give you their rating on it. And there's more and more of these kinds of things, and um, we'll just see what happens. What motivates you, Andrea?
That's a good question. I would say um, the desire to, honestly, I would say in the past it would have been money and
Mm,
success.
mm,
But to me now, which is the beauty about going through what I've been through, because I've learned and changed and wouldn't go back to that way of thinking. And now what motivates me is to feel strong
mm,
um, and healthy and have more awareness of myself and to be able to share that with others. Like I
mm,
remember going through this and I'm like, there's no point of me going through all this if I can't share it with others, if I can't help others get through it so they're not alone in it. And for a lot of people, I see it in all these groups that I belong to, they feel very alone in the illness they're going through, whether it's mental or physical, right? They're both really big, and for some people it's both. So to know that I can keep working on myself and healing and gaining this knowledge, and I can help others with it and help them from not struggling and to feel stronger and more powerful and understand their bodies is everything to
Hmm.
me. That's just, I feel so grateful, as tough as this journey was, to go from owning an insurance business and having to really leave that and having to choose either myself or the business, which was very difficult. But then leading into this, and I've worked with a lot of actually insurance agents and business owners over the years because they've become so sick. Because typically a business owner isn't doing the best job of taking care of themselves. So the fact that I get to be here today with you and share my story is amazing. I'm
Hmm.
so grateful. And one or two people listen to this and they want to make a change or a shift, and they do, that motivates me to keep going to help
Hmm.
other people so they don't feel alone like I did.
Yeah, impact, Andrea. It's wonderful.
Absolutely.
And it's the trait of a remarkable person, I feel, when they do something that really benefits them and they want to share it with others. I think we see, people doing certain things and kind of holding it in, and this is what I did, but to be able to, now go on podcasts or write books or write blogs or create videos and say, look, this is what I did, and I know it can help you as well. So, given that motivation, Andrea, how do you measure success?
I guess I measure success by the small things for
Hmm.
me. Like, to me, that's really success when I know, and I'll have clients talk about this. Like, I talked to my sister about this or told my mom, I know it was really difficult for me. Like, that's the true success for me, is like overcoming those little things where I was like, I did it. Like, that is amazing. That was something really difficult, where for somebody else that may seem so trivial,
Hmm.
but for me it was really big. And even like that negative self-talk, really being mindful and turning that around to be your own cheerleader, and like, that's success to me. Like, we can do these vision boards and have cars and yachts and boats and vacations, but that real core work on yourself will last you forever, no matter what happens in your life. If you lose a partner or a loved one, everything around you, when I'm doing that internal work and I'm going to therapy or meditating or going just spending time in nature and I'm filling myself up, that's success to me.
Hmm. I mentioned before my kind of breaking point or come to Jesus, whatever you want to call it, moment was when the doctor said that to me. Did you have a similar
I had
point?
so many.
Uh,
I had so many because at one point I was traveling from Florida to Washington State to a chronic illness
that's right.
clinic, and it was about $10,000 every time I went out there.
Yeah.
So this was all like functional medicine is all out of pocket. You pay for it yourself, or most of it. So I had a lot of those moments where it was, if you do this surgery, it'll fix everything. And I did. It didn't always work. I had that moment of, I had breast implants at 21. To talk about something vulnerable to share with the world. I
Hmm.
had those removed. And that was definitely, I'm so glad I did it. So grateful I did it. But it's something that's very difficult to do. So it was those moments where doctors sometimes didn't know exactly what to do, but I kept trying. And I remember one doctor, I'll never forget it. He said to me, he said, you have to give up sugar. And
Hmm.
my first thought was, I'd rather die.
Wow.
And I said that to him, and he's like, then you have a problem.
Wow.
So I never thought that sugar addiction and that craving for it would ever leave me.
Hmm.
So these last 8 months are the first time in my life since I was a little girl that I've ever not had sugar cravings.
Amazing.
The freedom that comes in that is unbelievable.
So you mentioned before of just a couple of people just kind of got motivation from this. The kind of practical takeaways are what, Andrea?
And that's really what I base my business on, is the nutritional part of it, understanding what you need to eat, not necessarily going by a book or a specific diet, listening to your body and exploring maybe like Mediterranean, the carnivore, and feeling what feels right for you and educating yourself. So it's the nutrition part, but it's also really understanding it and not just doing it because you're told to or heard about it, which is what I did with carnivore. I did that with vegan. I researched it. The other part of it is the mindset. We are consistently going to go back to our old ways if we don't create new pathways in our mind. And I think of it as these pathways that have been there forever, right? And
Hmm.
there's, it's that path you've been down as a kid, and everyone rode their bikes down it and everyone walked down it. It's been there forever. And then there's these other pathways that haven't been explored yet. And you start to create new pathways when you shift your mindset and you do like informal, formal mindfulness. So breathing techniques and mindful eating, mindful walking, things like that, that really allow you to, in that moment, make a decision, right? So we have that moment where we get to decide if we want to be disciplined or not. Do we want at 9:30, we get to decide, do I want to make an excuse to stay up later, or am I going to go to bed? Do I want to go to the gym right now? Am I going to force myself to, not, I shouldn't say force myself, but encourage myself to put on my gym clothes and go to the gym? You have that little moment where either your brain's going to talk you out of it and tell you why not to do it, or you're going to just push through and do it and say, I'm going to encourage myself, I can do this. So yeah, I think that's a big part of it, is that mindset. I feel like if we don't start to shift that, things don't end up being long term. And then there's a movement, of course. Movement is so important, especially after we eat. It's good that your microbiome does a little happy dance in your gut, and just not exercise, but just some movement. You could be doing chores. You could just go for a walk. You could be in your garden. So that's big as well. That's big for your lymph. That's big for your mindset. And supplementation is very big as well. Really understanding, okay, I don't want to take too many, but which ones are going to be most beneficial for me? And then the clean living. I think we overlook that a lot with what toxins we're exposed to, not having the proper air filtration in our home. When I learned that our mattresses are toxic and that what they give off, and it gets worse over the years, I was like, this is crazy. Like, why doesn't somebody have a giant billboard telling us these things?
Interesting.
So again, learning about my personal care products and what I needed to eliminate, and even when I was cooking with and all that, I think that's really important, because when we're doing these different diets and we're doing movement, we're detoxing. We're pushing the bad stuff out. But then if we're re-exposing ourselves with all the things around us, it's a lot of work to do to then just take it right back in.
Well, I was excited when we set this up, and I love what you're doing. Again, I think it's a trait of a remarkable person. It's important, especially here in the States. The obesity rates, our health is such. Unfortunately, the world seems to be following. Unfortunately, hopefully, we can reverse that trend with more conversations like this and awareness, and people just having the ability to listen and be open about these kinds of things. So anybody listening who wants to get in touch with you, Andrea, how can they?
Well, I feel like I'm everywhere, but it's AndreaJoyHealthCoaching.com. You can just Google Andrea Joy Health Coaching. I'm on TikTok. I'm on Instagram. I'm pretty much everywhere, on Facebook under Andrea Joy. So feel free to, if you have any questions at all, feel free to reach out. If you need support, that's what I'm there for. I do free 30-minute consultations to get to know, right? To meet somebody and see if they're really willing to make the changes and if we're a good fit, and let them know how I can help them.
Andrea Joy Health Coaching.com. We'll make sure to put it in the show notes. Like you said, you're on Instagram, you're on Facebook, you're on TikTok, you're on YouTube, LinkedIn. It's you've got great content too. You're very open, you're very honest. I love the discussions about the mammogram, about your journey through carnivore diet. It's really cool to kind of see that transition. Andrea, thank you so much for your time. Next time I'm in your neck of the woods, perhaps we'll get a cup of tea.
Yeah, that would be great.
You be well.
Thank you. You too.
Thank you for listening and/or viewing Joey Pinz Discipline Conversations. Please share this episode with one or two of your friends who you think may benefit from the episode. Our website, www.joeypins.com. There you'll find lots of resources, and you could join our mailing list. Please follow us on all our social media, Instagram, Twitter, and Facebook. Podcast information. The video version of our podcast is on YouTube. Please subscribe. Audio is on all major podcasting platforms. Please follow them. And if you like it, please consider giving 5-star rating. Would really appreciate that. Thank you again for listening or watching Joey Pinz Discipline Conversations.